The Truth and the Circle Around It by K.G. Scott. Chapter 12. The Western Swing. Page 207. 1330 June 5, 1992, Red Deer, Alberta, Canada. While the chase begins in Portland, another person you know is busy at a computer terminal at the RCMP detachment in Red Deer. Kelly Gordon has been in touch with Inspector Nguyen at K Division ever since his dad had a meeting with the inspector and called in a couple of favors. You remember that Earl said he would be stopping in Edmonton on his way home? Well, they did offer him something, but it was far more than the desk job he had thought it would be. Earl had served in Vancouver at E Division back in the early 80s. He had worked with undercover officers and informants. He was never undercover himself, but had been on a lot of hairy assignments, making arrests and gathering info that led to arrests. This doesn't sound like anything special for a policeman to be doing in a big city, especially a port city like Vancouver, does it? Well, what does make it special is at that time, one of the informants he worked with regularly was a guy by the name of Jerome Delfino, Alvarez's cousin. Delfino had disappeared in 1985 after a big drug bust. There was a huge fire in which several people were killed. One of them was thought to be Delfino. But a few months ago, a cold squad team from the Vancouver City Police had taken some of the evidence to RCMP Forensics Lab to be tested. They were trying to determine who exactly was killed that day, now that DNA testing could give them answers that simply weren't available 6 or 7 years ago. Hell, they weren't even available 2 years ago. However, now that they had done their investigation, they found that none of their bodies belonged to Delfino. You and I have figured out that one too. In fact, none of the bodies were who they thought they were. 2 of them turned out to be homeless people who had gone missing, and the other was another informant who police thought had taken off to another country, which in a way was true. A man using the name of the dead informant had indeed taken a flight from Seattle, Washington to San Diego, California. There was seen crossing the border into Mexico, and then disappearing. Who was he seen by, you might ask? An undercover police operative who worked with Earl Roberts by the name of Nguyen, who now had worked his way up the ladder. Now do you see where the favors were pulled from? Now that Earl and Nguyen could put their heads together on this, they figure Delfino, who was a dead ringer for the missing informant, would only have to make minor changes in his appearance and actions to make people think he was the other guy. Once in Mexico, he could disappear in a second, especially with the help of a guy like Alvarez. Now the RCMP and FBI were on the same page. The puzzle would now be easier to put together. Kelly was going over case files, trying to match up data like fingerprints, evidence left at crime scenes, and similarities between crimes, all thought to be connected to Alvarez and his gang. He was going over information from police forces in major cities all over North America. He was correlating information when something jumped up in front of him. "Holy shit," Kelly said to himself, but loudly enough for everyone around him to hear. "What have you got?" Constable Terry Taggart, one of his buddies, said as he rolled his chair across the room to have a look. "I'm correlating data from these case files I've been working on. I forgot to delete the cases that we thought weren't related to our case. And look what happened, Kelly said to Terry as he pointed to the screen. 3 separate case scenarios. Terry said, yeah, I know. At the same time, the Alvarez gang were pulling off hits. There were robberies or holdups and murders in each city. They all follow each other. Totally unrelated, yet there's too much here for them not to be connected, Kelly pointed out. Look at the methods in these murders, Terry began. Are these the hits you were talking about? Yes, Kelly said. Now look at these. These other murders have a similar MO, see? The hits are with guns, but the murders are with stabbings, all in the same place, but are separate except for the fact that they happen at the same time in the same cities. There are time differences, but not date differences, Terry realized. These are like a serial profile. One of the guys in that gang is a serial killer. The robberies are going on almost at the same time as the hits, Kelly said excitedly. But these serial killings are at different times. Hey, look at this, Kelly. Terry could no longer contain his enthusiasm. His voice boomed around the room and everyone could hear the conversation. What does Socorro mean to you? I don't know why. I don't know why, Kevin answered as he looked over at the screen. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, Terry counted away. 6 of these victims have the word Socorro engraved somewhere on their bodies. Someone has to already be working on this somewhere, Kelly said as he looked at his watch. We'd better show this to the staff sergeant, Terry suggested. Yes, and then I'll be on my way to Edmonton, Kelly said as he looked at his friend with a cold, almost terrified expression. I think I just joined my dad's task force. 0858, June 6, 1992, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. The next morning, Kelly arrived at K Division headquarters in Edmonton. He was carrying a trunk full of the cases he had been working on. After signing in and taking his luggage to the meeting room, he went into one of the open cubicles to make a phone call. After 2 rings, Carla picks up the phone, sensing it's the call she's been waiting for. Hello? Hello, beautiful, Kelly says with almost a sigh in his love-starved voice. Oh, sweetie, I miss you already. Oh, Kelly, baby, I miss you too. Just think what it's going to be like after I've spent a week in Winnipeg. Carla's young, innocent voice, cheery and smoothly satisfying. Don't remind me, honey. I still can't believe you won a contest you didn't even enter, Kelly joked. Hey, I won a contest nobody entered. At least not anyone I know of, anyway. She giggled. Have you been packing? Kelly asked. No, I thought I would wait till I got there and blow all the prize money on new clothes, she answered sarcastically. No, silly, Kelly said through a loud chuckle. I mean, have you been getting ready to move into the new place with me? Oh, she purposefully paused for a couple seconds to get a rise out of him. Well, I might have put a couple of things into the trash. She tried to say it with a straight face, but couldn't help but giggle at the end, and the 2 of them laughed and laughed. The 2 young lovers had said their goodbyes, and Kelly had gone into the meeting with his dad, McEwen, RCMP officers Harold Tillman and Ray Oliver, along with FBI agents Stanley Burton and Martin King. This, along with Clark, Myers, and Hines, plus Vancouver detective Art Stevens and Seattle detective Brian Rondell, was a newly formed Canadian-American anti-terrorist organization. The first target on the list, do I need to tell you? From reports they had been getting from Portland, they knew the team down there was getting close to Alvarez and his gang. They had picked up Brock's trail, but he had led them on a wild goose chase all night. They were waiting for another update, but went ahead with their meeting and took in the startling new information Kelly had discovered. 0807, June 6, 1992, Portland, Oregon, USA. This is Unit B, a tired voice said, before a long and deserved yawn. I've lost him again. This is Unit 3. I've got him. This voice was even drearier. This is Clark. He began to almost yell. I thought we had a good thing going here. Radio silence. Unless I ask you for something? You're getting a little rough with my people, Clark, Deputy Chief Watts said loudly enough, and with a growl. Then FK got the point. Of course, that only pissed FK off even more. Grrr. Clark growled at Watts with a wild-eyed expression that would have tamed any lion except this one. Okay. Joe put his arms out to separate the two as they began to push up against each other while standing beside the car, trying to make sense of the chase on a city map. Look, our plan isn't working like we thought it would, but it hasn't gone completely to shit yet either. That's right, Hines agreed. We still have an edge. We haven't found the main group yet, but they think we're completely lost. We've lost a lot of time, and some of our men are getting confused by the code because we've been at this for 10 or 11 hours longer than we thought it would take. But we aren't finished. Oh, fuck. All right, Clark bellowed. Chief Watts. Joe wanted to get a new look at things. How many small airports are around here that they could get to in a hurry if they wanted to make a real quick and quiet getaway? How close? Watts replied. Within 15 minutes or so, Joe answered. Well, he thought for a second while the four men looked at each other and caught the train of thought all at once. At least 3. But if you go 20 minutes or further, there's about 8 I can think of. How many are in your jurisdiction? Clark asked hastily. Watts let out a slight breath and said 4. Any right in town? Joe asked. Not really. None that would be easy to hide at, Watts said. So we're looking at 4 small airports within 20 minutes of here that they could get to? Hines asked. Right, was Watts' reply. According to the last known sighting of Brock, where is the closest to that? Joe excitedly asked as he began scanning the map. Witherby. It was an old training strip from World War II up until the late 60s. Then it was sold to a flying club. Watts pointed to it on the map. Just a flying club? Clark asked. Yeah, actually, only for gliders and hang gliders. The only other planes there would be the ones they use to tow with, Watts said. This is Clark. You guys and the choppers come land here at Gabriel Park, Clark ordered. When they get here, we'll tell them to split up and fly by these airports. They can all fly far enough away to go almost unnoticed, but still get a look to see if there are any planes that look out of place. You mean like a Lear jet at a glider school? Watts was already knowing the answer. That's my bet, too. Joe replied as Clark shook his head yes to answer Watts' question. We have a couple turboprops as well, Watts said. They won't catch a Lear, but they'll go long enough to get a fix on where it might go. Better yet, the Washington State Police have a Lear in Olympia. They use it to chase drug runners. You're right, Clark realized, and they owe me a few favors. I'll call them from that payphone over there. I don't want Chance Alvarez picking up my car phone on a scanner. 0811, June 6, 1992, Portland, Oregon, USA. Get in, Gary, Willie yelped as he opened the door on the car that hadn't even come to a complete stop yet. Fuck, man, make this prick go like hell, Brock said excitedly as he jumped in and slammed the door on the Porsche. As they sped away, they listened to the scanner, the same kind of mindless chatter as 10 hours ago. Brock has seen and noticed the same 3 cars time after time throughout this whole night. He now knows they are onto him, but making it seem like they are not, But now, as the speeding roadster zips along, he realized that he doesn't see any of them, or even one of the helicopters. Could it really be finally true? Could he have finally made some kind of escape? Willie! He almost shouts. There's a gas station coming up on the next block to the right. Pull in and go right into one of the car wash bays. Are you fucking nutso or what? Willie yelps. We're clear of them, but I want to make sure, he proclaims excitedly. Willie does it so fast that he almost doesn't get stopped before the closed door at the entrance. Brock jumps out and opens the door as Willie zips in. He quickly closes the door. Good. I don't think anyone caught that, Brock says. Fucking A, man. We can get tokens right here so we don't even have to go talk to the fag at the counter, Willie exclaims in his usual charming way. Okay, get a couple, but don't start spraying unless someone comes along, Brock orders. Let's see who shows up in the next few minutes. Yeah, got ya. But hey, Gary, man, boss said to be there by no later than 9:30. Willie reminded him of the time Alvarez said he would only wait until before leaving stragglers behind. Yeah, was all Brock needed to say. Almost 6 minutes went by and no sign of choppers or cars. Then one of the helicopters flew over, but not very quickly. Then, a few seconds after that, one of the cars Brock recognizes went by, both the driver and passenger looking sharply through well-focused eyes. Brock ran down the inside of the car wash along the makeshift hallway that led along the door at the edge of each bay. He could see further up the street as the car proceeded along, watching until it was gone. Then the same chopper circled once again, and after that, nothing. They had kept going. Nothing on the scanner at all except the truth. We lost them. Okay, Willie, let's get the fuck out of here, Brock began. Yeah, okay, but we need a new ride. They probably know this one, Willie reasoned. Yeah, I guess you're right, Brock agreed. Then, as if requested, a blue Ford Bronco pulled into one of the neighboring wash bays. With a crack on the back of the head, with the butt of a gun, they had a new ride. Before they left, Brock had Willie spray down the inside of the Porsche in order to hide evidence of who was in it. Then, using some of the man's own cloths, they tied him up and locked him in the car. That would at least give them a little while. Well, Alvarez had almost outdone his own expectations this time. A chartered tour bus. That's right. While the police and FBI were watching for planes, Antonio and the boys, along with a couple new pals who didn't want to be there when the cops came to ask questions, were on tour and out of town heading northeast. They followed Highway 84 along the Columbia River until Maryhill, then north across the state line towards Richland, where they dropped off their extra buddies. Alvarez thanked them for all their help with $10,000 cash each. Then it was off to Spokane where the plane was waiting. Alvarez decided not to go to Seattle this year because of all the heat. However, there was one place he had only driven through before. A small Canadian city where he had first met and recruited one of his merry gang. Willie wanted to go back to Red Deer, and Antonio thought it might be a good place to hide. And besides, he could celebrate Canada's birthday just as well as America's. 1150 June 6, 1992, Highway 84, near Hermiston, Oregon, USA. Henderson, Alvarez was speaking in German. Come sit with me for a while. I feel we can talk now, Alvarez said quietly, so he wouldn't wake anyone else up. Then he and Henderson went back to the rear seat of the bus. We're far enough away from everyone, even if someone does wake up, Henderson pointed out in English as they sat down. What a wonderful change of last-minute planning on your part, Antonio. Yes, I thought so myself, Alvarez gloated. I also put a second part of the plan in place that I didn't even tell you about. Really? Henderson stretched out his reply with a very surprised yet interested look on his face. Yes, really, he joyfully exclaimed. Remember our little conversation about Salvatore and Fiorelli? How I thought they might be playing two sides? Yes, of course I do, answered Henderson. I had some people get in my plane in Portland and fly to Seattle, he said as Henderson's expression became delighted. I thought you would like that. We are not going to go to Seattle this year. The person who is close to me is handling all the details. No? Henderson was surprised to say the least. Most people don't know where Alvarez considers being home. Henderson does. I've decided to let these other people parade around as if they are us. They'll get caught soon enough, but that won't matter. Alvarez chuckles as he speaks. We'll be so far gone they won't find us, and that is what we need. So what does that have to do with our two friends in the middle of the bus? Henderson, now seeing a train of thought forming in Alvarez's maniacal mind. They'll be going to Seattle, Alvarez smiles, without even knowing it. Zero 0540, June 7th, 1992. Near High River, Alberta, Canada. Antonio Alvarez and his entourage have touched down at a remote airfield just south of Calgary, Alberta. They have got into a few vehicles left for them by some friends, and the plane has taken off to fly back to the good old United States of America. Since its course in both directions was low and under radar, and the crossing was over an Indian reservation, that is, in both countries, they were not seen. Another chance for the vain Mr. Alvarez to smugly pat himself on the back for being cunning and devious. The plane has taken off and is returning to the United States, and two passengers take a guess who. Yes, Salvatore and Fiorelli have been drugged and left on the plane. After making its way over the border in the skies above the native reservation, the pilot will take a right turn and head towards Seattle. When it gets to a small airport just a few miles east of the city, it will land. Then three men will put the two unwilling passengers into a car and drive them into the city. They will be taken to a house where a person close to Alvarez will keep them busy for a few days. This person who is close to Alvarez will make sure they are noticed by snitches and the like until the authorities are getting close. Then Benito Salvatore and Edward Fiorelli will no longer be considered assets as live decoys. They will be liabilities as talkative informants. Before that happens, the person who is close to Alvarez will make them suddenly disappear. And meanwhile, Alvarez and his gang will be hiding out in Red Deer, where everyone except Willie can go unnoticed. 0738, June 7, 1992, near Walla Walla, Washington, USA. Alvarez's plane touches down at the far end of a remote crop dusting airport 25 miles east of Walla Walla, Washington. The person who was close to Alvarez was there personally to meet it, along with a panel van, two cars, and a few large dudes. The two drugged and still passed out pawns were loaded into the van. Then, before anyone from the private little airport can get close enough for a good look, the plane jets off into the horizon. The two cars and the van slipped through the shallow ditch and back onto the road at the same point where they first entered the area, and off the group went toward Seattle. Salvatore and Fiorelli were suspected of paying both sides. As far as Benito Salvatore is concerned, it was more than just a good guess, and Alvarez can't afford to keep suspicious people around for long. And besides, everyone is replaceable. As the cars and vans sweep and swerve down the mountain highways and on the way across Washington state towards Seattle, the two men are untied, and as they slowly awake from the artificial slumber they have been in, they are greeted as though they are still friends of those around them. They are told how Antonio needed them freshly rested for what they are about to do, and how they must be kept alert, so they are handed some uppers and told they are very special to Alvarez, and how big the bonus for the upcoming job will be. Sounds good so far, I guess, Salvatore says as the cloud begins to clear. I don't fucking like it at all, Fiorelli blasts. Why the fuck did we have to be fucked with like this? You must realize how Antonio operates, a monotone voice from the passenger side seat of the van proclaims. This is how he wanted things done, and so this is how you will accept them to be done. The two men look towards the front of the van. It's the type of van that parcel carriers use. Exposed foam insulation stuck to the inner walls, dark, coated mirror finish on the inside of the back windows. A pair of floodlights attached to the stanchions on the ceiling, the spare tire and equipment mounted to the side in the factory fashion. A couple of gymnasium mats have been placed over top of the hard rubber mat floor. There is a seat on each side facing the rear, the backs of them separated by the driver and passenger seats by a tin barrier with a semi-heavy metal screen at the top. Large, hard-looking fellows, who for some reason look familiar, occupy each of the rear seats. All that can be seen of the front is the inner edges of the high back bucket seats, the rear view mirror, and the upper portion of the windshield with the world going by on the outside. Lay back and let the pills do their job, boys. It's going to be a while before you can rest again. The voice from the front says. Where are we? Fiorelli asks as he perches himself up on his knees to get a look through the windshield. Half of the way there, one of the thugs in the rear seat says with a chuckle. Real funny, punch monkey, Salvatore says with an air of disgust. Hey, we're on the same team, buddy, the other thug says, trying to bring a calm to the moment. We are just outside of Yakima, Washington, on our way to Everett, came the voice from the front. In a minute, we'll be on Highway 90, and we'll stop for something to eat in Ellensburg. Then what? Salvatore asked sarcastically. Then we'll give you some of the information you will need, the voice from up front said, in a still monotone. Yet somehow more serious fashion, we might even let you sit in the seats. Just at that moment, Salvatore realizes why these two thugs look familiar. The one behind the driver was a member of one of those hidden in the woods survival groups who had invaded once about a year before when he was a member of a special FBI tactical unit. The guy wouldn't recognize him because during those takedowns Salvatore was dressed in full gear, complete with a balaclava to cover the face of the agent. The other thug was an agent from one of the state sub-offices who he recognized but had never met. He quickly came to the conclusion that neither knew the truth about the other, and suddenly, as the hair raised up on the back of his neck, he realized there probably wasn't anyone in the group, including Fiorelli, fully on his side. Another Canada Day for our happy new family in Red Deer. Wendy and Jason had moved in together, that much we knew. But they have also used the last Valentine's Day to put on the rings and set a date for the wedding. The girls are using Daddy, when they speak to Jason, and that's just fine with everyone. Each year, this is the holiday that Darlene and Barbie look forward to almost as much as Christmas. Not only is it during summer holidays, it also means games, gifts, travel, and above all, fireworks. They've seen fireworks in quite a few different places since Jason came into their lives. They've been to Independence Day in Buffalo, Canada Day in Ottawa, Red Deer in Edmonton, and this year, Calgary, 0939, June 30, 1992, Red Deer, Alberta, Canada. Give me a big kiss before I leave. Carla held out her arms for a hug as she adjusted her position on the chair so the girls could give her a hug each. Bye-bye, Auntie Carla, the girls said in unison as they rushed over to give her big hugs and kisses, which she returned enthusiastically. Okay, you two need to get to bed so you can be rested up for tomorrow, Jason said to the girls with a bit of a forceful tone. Meanwhile, the two youngsters kept laughing and running around the kitchen table and made the turn around the corner into the living room. Then they jumped up onto the couch, down to the floor, up onto the love seat, down to the floor, and back into the kitchen for now the third time. Enough, Wendy needed to say a little more. This time they stopped just long enough to steal a kiss into Jason's cheek, a quick hug onto Mommy's leg as she stood at the counter, and then nighty-night as they zipped up the stairs. Brush your teeth, Jason yelled up the stairs as he walked into the living room from the kitchen. I'll get going now, Carla smiled and gave each of them a hug. See you later, she said as she closed the door behind her. Are you coming to sit down for a bit, babe? He called out. Be there in a minute. The water hasn't boiled yet, Wendy noted as she put a mint-flavored tea bag into her cup and a lemon-flavored one into his. Is there anything else to get ready tonight? Jason asked as she walked up to the cupboard at the edge of the floor where the two rooms meet. Well, if there is, I think I can wait until morning. I think it can wait until morning, she said. It's not like we're going to be in a huge rush to get going, she pointed out. Maybe we won't. But I know two little people that will. He chuckled as he pointed up towards the ceiling with his left arm. Oh, here we go. As the water began to boil and make the whistle go off gently, Wendy moved quickly over to open the spout of the kettle. She pushed the little button to lock the spout open, then put 1 cube of sugar onto each saucer. Yeah, they'll be in an uproar to get to Grandma's, as if it were Christmas. That's because your mom thinks it is Christmas, Jason said in a sarcastic tone. Then he got up and headed into the kitchen just as Wendy was pouring the boiling water into the cups. He opened a cupboard above the fridge and pulled out a bag of chocolate chip cookies, and then grabbed a plate from the drying rack and poured a dozen or so cookies into it. Do you want yours warmed up, dear? Oh, yes, please, she said with a huge smile when she finally looked up to see what he had just done. Then she opened the microwave oven door and he put the plate in, set the time and temp, and pushed start. They shared a few moments of kissing and then held onto each other while Jason leaned back gently against the counter. Tonight there would be no one coming over to visit, no one interrupting them. They would have this night to themselves. The girls had been excited for days and had played steadily all day. So once they had gone to bed, they would sleep all night. The girls had said good night one more time before going to their rooms. It was only about 3 or 4 minutes afterwards that not another sound would be heard. Jason and Wendy took the warm cookies and tea into the living room and sat down beside each other on the couch. The rest of the night was quiet, but very romantic. Zzz, the zipper opening sound of a stray bullet as it goes speeding close by your ear. Of all the things Kevin Shears has been through, the one small detail that is taunting and terrorizing him in his sleep night after night after night is the quietest sound he can remember from the night of the shootout in the yards, streets, and alleys of Grand Prairie. Not the gunshots, not the screams of fear from area residents that echoed in the night, not the barking of dogs in the crisp night air, not the scream of pain that he didn't let out when the first bullet struck him on the side of his head and caused the button on his uniform cap to split, sending a small piece to tear a cut into the top of his left ear, while the rest dug into his scalp and careened off his skull. Not the various sounds bullets made when they were hitting or bouncing off of things near and around him. Not the voices that bellowed and crackled as questions and orders were being broadcast across the police radios. No, the sound he hears out of nowhere in totally unrelated dreams is the sound he heard twice that night. He was far enough away from the shooter that the bullets stayed just ahead of the sound that propelled them. The first bullet made the sound of a split second before it hit him and spun him down and around to lie in the middle of the alley. The next two did not hit him, but they went so close past his ear that the same air that carried their tune pushed a wisp of cold winter chill into the right ear. He could feel the wind they caused as they narrowly missed killing him. He'll be sleeping peacefully, dreaming a dream, then suddenly he gets three of his senses awakened in horror. At the same time, he hears the zzz of spinning bullets as it speeds along. He feels the quick rush of cool air it pushes out of its way, and as quick and as vivid as these two senses are teased, he sees the bullet. It's as big as a train, and it's right in front of his eyes. 0525, July 1st, 1992, Edmonton, Alberta, Alberta, Canada. Ah! Kevin screams as his whole body explodes in fear. His eyes open wide, every muscle in his body jumps at once, each arm and each leg joust and extend so that his body is lying straight and erect on his back with his hands out all the way to each side. His fingers stretched out firm and straight with the palms pushing down at the sheets, grasping desperately for something to hang on to. Whoa! Tracy awakens with the man in the bed beside her, looking up at the ceiling. Kevin, what happened? His right arm had pushed directly underneath her, and in doing so it spun her for a loop beneath the comforter. Muscle spasm, he quickly responds. He can get away with it because he actually does have almost the same kind of reaction to the sharp pains left over from yet another injury. Oh, sweetie, that was the worst one you've had, she softly whispers, her voice full of passion and sympathy. Yeah, well, he begins pausing to continue his heavy breathing as he begins to settle down from the blast of fear. Going to get up and walk it off. How about a cold drink of ice water? Yes, please. Tracy smiles, but there is still a sympathetic and worried look in her eyes. I'll be okay in a minute, sweetie, Kevin says positively as he takes the 2 steps across the bachelor suite to get to the fridge where the pitcher of cold filtered water awaits. Maybe you should take one of your pills, Tracy suggests. Well, Kevin says after taking a deep breath, it's already 5:30. If I take one now, I'll be groggy for about 4 hours. Remember, we have to meet Andy and Donna at the lake before 9. Okay, I can drive and you can rest. She smiles again, this time with a sparkle in her eye that has replaced the earlier concern. I'll tell you what, he begins as he hands her the glass of cold water he has just poured for her. I'll take one Tylenol now and one before we get going in the morning. Okay, she agrees as she watches him pop the pill in his mouth and wash it down. Give me one too. I'm still wound up from your scream. I think everyone in the building is probably awake and calling the police right now, she giggled. Ever been arrested while having sex? Kevin asked, with a definite amount of lust in his voice. I thought you needed to sleep, Tracy giggled deeply. Then knock me out, Kevin whispered as he rolled over on top of her and began to purr like a hungry lion while he brushed his left cheek against hers. Tracy sank into the bed, closed her eyes, and Chapter 13, The Truth and the Circle Around It by K.G. Scott.